The Durgai Amman Temple is situated in the busy Chinna Kadai street, about half a kilometer before the town bus stand. As one enters the temple, he is greeted by the majestic Arunachala hill as a backdrop. Within the compound, there are two grand people and one banyan tree. There is a famous tank called Khadgatirtham with a perennial flow of water which has a glorious history to it. Apart from the regular Abhishekams and puja to Goddess Durga, three other forms of worship are performed by devotees. One is Durga Rahukala Puja on Tuesdays and Fridays, when married women light oil lamps during Rahukala period of the day. The second is the Sri Chakra Puja on certain auspicious days. Inside the temple precincts, there is a beautiful stone-carved Sri Chakra Meru installed in a shrine. This Sri Chakra was consecrated by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. The third is worship of snake idols. In the temple courtyard, there is an altar with a series of snake idols, and women congregate here and perform puja with turmeric and vermilion to these idols. During the Navaratri festivals, special pujas are also performed on all the 9 days to the Utsava Murti of the goddess. The last Kumbhabhishekam of the temple was performed in the year 2016. As per Arunachala Puranam, Durga is recognized as Guardian of Arunachala, and the Deepam Festival is also preceded by a celebration of this aspect of the goddess. The Durgai Amman Temple is the only Tiruvannamalai Temple that actually participates in the functions with Arunachaleswarar Temple during Karthigai Deepam. According to Arunachala Puranam, Goddess Parvati had come down to earth on the command of Lord Shiva to do penance in Kanchipuram as expiation for the inadvertent sin of covering his eyes playfully. This led to the dissolution of the universe. After her severe penance in Kanchipuram, Mother Parvati comes to Gautama Rishi ashram located in the woods of Tiruvannamalai to complete her penance, as well as to hear from the Maharshi the glory of Arunachala. While thus residing in the Gautama ashrama, a powerful demon called Mahishasura, with a boon of deathlessness from Lord Shiva, enters the forest. Unable to bear his atrocities, the other rishis and devotees doing their meditation in Arunachala approach Mother Parvati for protection. The mother assumes the form of Durga and vanquishes the demon after a protracted fight. After the demon is beheaded, a Sivalinga that is stuck in the throat of the demon is picked up by Mother Parvati, which gets stuck to her hand. To remove it, Gautama Rishi tells her that she should bathe in the sacred waters of the confluence of 9 rivers. To bring that confluence to Arunachala itself, Goddess Durga pierces the earth with her sword, whereby the waters gush out of the cleft formed by the cut of the sword. This is the famous Khadgatirtham that is found inside the temple. After bathing in the waters for a month, the lingam finally comes off the hand of Parvati Devi. It is then installed next to the Tirtham and came to be known as Papa Vinasana Lingam.
The demon Mahisha was the most powerful and was like death to death himself. In the city of Alagai, he plundered all the riches that were there, leaving Kubera in destitution. Grabbing the head and tail of the serpent Adisesha, he used it like a sling inlaid with beautiful jewels. Turning Agni out of his chariot, he gave it to his sons, grabbed Soma, squeezing out the Amrita and drinking it down. he would wander at large upon the white elephant of Indra. At other times, he would ride in the horses of the sun trotting on before him. Then he would mount the lion vehicle ridden by Niruti. Carrying a sword dripping with blood, he dealt out death to all life forms. Since his head was that of a buffalo, god Yama was wandering about on foot without his buffalo mount, fearful lest any soul evade him. How then might I adequately describe his violence and cruelty? During the time that this demon dwelt in Mahishapuram, which had been created by the architect of the gods, receiving tributes from Brahma himself, 1,000 armed warriors went forth into the forests to hunt for elephant and other wild game. When those demons came and surrounded the grove where Parvati was performing tapas, the 8 Bhairavas slew them all. Messengers informed Mahisha the slaying of the hunting party and of the tapas of the Mother Parvati. Mahisha belched out smoke in a bitter laugh. Fiery sparks flew from both his eyes. The elephants of the 8 directions hung their heads. The hosts of the gods trembled in fear. Soon Nikumban, one of his army chiefs, spoke up. Could such feeble beings withstand the anger you have voiced? With the weapon I hold in my hand, I shall slay them. Speaking thus, he departed swiftly on his way. Tall chariots and dark elephants rolled forward. It was as if the Western Ocean, rising in anger, were setting out to do battle with the Eastern Ocean. Mounted on a chariot drawn by 1,000 horses, Nikumban came on, heading for Uma's grove. Espying them as they approached, Nokkanangu and Thakkanangu, bristling with weapons, confronted them in battle to halt their advance. The 8 Bhairavas let out a roar fit to crack the universal shell. Destroyed in a trice that entire army with the exception of Nikumban and his charioteer. Observing the destruction, Nikumban rode to the attack, urging on his chariot so that it flew like a discus and fired countless arrows into the face of Thakkanangu. But the maid of heaven, brushing aside the hail of arrows, sucked out Nikumban's life. A river of blood flowed. The Bhairavas and the 2 Anangus put on victory garlands. Meanwhile, messengers rushed to the buffalo-headed Mahisha to report the slaughter. Upon hearing this, Mahisha turned to Kaidavan, another army chief, and said, "If the word gets about that her cohorts have slaughtered our great army, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva would stop their tribute to me." He mounted a chariot harnessed to 1,000 elephants. 12 other demons, each possessing the strength of 11 crores of elephants, mounted their chariots and followed Mahisha. A sea of demons, thousands in number and variety, came on. There came amidst the din of pipes and drums, with ghouls and black crows dancing about in expectation of a feast, and they drew near to Parvati's grove. Observing the approach of the murderous demon, the rishis were afraid and came to Uma in great distress, begging for sanctuary. Uma, eradicating their fears, turned to Durga and said, "Take up your sword and slay him." Durga, mounted on a lion, the vanguard of the army, marched out with Arunachala to the fore and Kali and Duntumi to the rear. The Bhairavas on their dog vehicle and the rest of the 7 mothers riding on their respective vehicles accompanied Durga. Advancing, they slew in an instant half of Mahisha's army, using stone pestles, trees, whole mountains, boulders, an assortment of weapons, and even their bare hands. But the leaders of powerful Mahisha's army and Mahisha himself, like a great mountain, returned the attack and drove Durga's entire army from the field. In despair, Durga cried out, "Uma!" As soon as Durga cried out, "Uma, you are our help and support," 64 crores of yoginis rose up with a thunderous roar and destroyed Mahisha's army with a hail of fire and thunderbolts. Arani slew Arushikan and Varani slew Kantan as he attacked. Karani killed Karan and Narani took the life of Narakan. Trident-wielding Chamundi slew Mindan and Varahi slew Chandan. Maheshwari destroyed Madhu and Lakshmi took the precious life of Neelan. Dundumi wielded her club, taking the head of Soni the Woonan off. Arunachalai, whose hand displaced the conch, attacked and slew Agnikannan. Kaidavan and Pugaikannan met their deaths, slain in battle by Sundari. Durga sighted Mahisha and went to confront him in battle. Attacked by Mahisha, the 7 mothers used their weapons to ward off his missiles. Then Durga rode to the attack, mounted on her lion, and, taking the conch in her hand, gave a blast that shook Mount Meru. Even as the sound of her conch rang out across the battlefield, all the demons fell into a stupor. The 2 remaining combatants, Durga and Mahisha, poured down upon each other a rain of arrows. But for every arrow that Durga fired, there was an arrow of Mahisha's to smash it asunder. Then Durga unleashed 2 fearsome arrows like the jaws of the crescent moon to embed themselves in Mahisha's head. Those 2 arrows unleashed a surging flood of hot red blood which poured down like molten copper. They were arrows, but their curving shape made them look like horns growing out of his head. Mahisha cut the bow of Durga, and she embedded the bow in his forehead, along with the arrows she had fired. A flame like the fire leapt up from the brow of Mahisha, firer of a multitude of powerful arrows. Would Durga tolerate the destruction of her deadly bow? No. In a transport of rising fury, she launched a fiery discus and sent the severed head of that sinner tumbling to the ground. In spite of being chopped to pieces by Durga's discus, Mahisha did not perish. Through the enduring power of his previous tapas, he appeared as a powerful elephant and returned the attack. Durga's lion mount leapt into the elephant's head, scooping out its brain and eating it. But Mahisha was still strong and, taking up his club, launched it once more. The queen of the demon hordes countered it with her sharp spear. When that poison-oozing spear landed, death came to the elephant-headed Mahisha, defeated in the furious battle. He crumbled to nothing like a tree hollowed out by 1,000,000 beetles. But he returned once more to the attack in the form of a horse-headed demon. Next, Mahisha assumed the form of fire, then of water. He assumed the form of Brahma and Vishnu, all out of the power of illusion. Then Durga meditated on the holy feet of Uma firmly in her heart. No sooner had she done so, a voice was heard speaking from the heaven. You must strike off Mahisha's head when he is in his buffalo form again, and trample on it with your immaculate feet. Then his evil power of delusion will be destroyed. After battling with Mahisha in countless illusory forms, Durga dispatched them all with her trident. The wicked demon assumed once more the form of a buffalo, took up arms. She cut off his head, toppling it to the ground, and trampled on it with her holy feet. Was it an achievement that Maya should be dispelled by those matchless feet, when the mere thought of her holy feet is enough to eradicate not only Maya but ego and karma too?
வீழ்ந்த பின் பரிவேடமது ஆயதில் போந்து வெம்கதை கொண்டு புடைத்தனன் சேர்ந்தவன் கதையும் அவன் சென்னியும் நாந்தகம் கொண்டு அறுத்தனள் நாரணி அங்கதன் பின் நழலுருவு ஆயினன் கங்கையாயினன் காரிருள்ளாயினன் பங்கையாசனன் ஆயினன் பங்கைய மங்கை நாயகனாயினன் மாயையால் ஈது கண்டு அவள் என் செய்வள் மாயையால் வாதை செய்தனன் என்று தளர்ந்து உமை பாதம் நெஞ்சினில் பற்றினள் பற்றிய போதில் ஓர் மொழி விண்ணில் புகன்றதே மாய வேடங்கள் அன்றி மகிடமே ஆய போதில் அவன் தலை தள்ளியே தூய தாளின் விதிக்கத் தொலைந்திடும் தீய மாயை எனச் சொல்ல தேறினாள் மட்டில் மாயை வடிவின் மலைந்த பின் நெட்டு இலை தலை சூலத்தில் நீக்கினாள் துட்டன் மேதிய தாய்ப்படை தொட்டனன் வெட்டி வீழ்த்தி அடியின் மிதித்தனள் ஒப்பிலா பதம் ஊன்றி மிதித்திடில் கப்பின் வாயை தவிர்ப்பது பாரமோ அப்பதத்தை நினைக்கினும் ஆணவம் செப்பு காமிய மாயையும் தீர்க்கும்.
The gods poured down a rain of blossoms. Buffalo-headed Mahisha attained liberation, and at his ruddy throat a shining lingam was seen. Durga saw that symbol of the Lord at his throat and grasped it in her hand. Taking it with her, she went to Mother Parvati, making obeisance at her, and gave her the Lord. Out of his love for her, the Lord remained firmly stuck to her hand. When Mother Parvati saw this and asked in surprise, "Why does Shivalingam cling thus to my hand?" Then Gautama replied with due respect,
போதவானவர் பூமழை பெய்தனர் மீதி மாமுகன் மெய்கதி உற்றனன் தீதிலா அவன் செம்களம் தன்னிலோ ஜோதிலிங்கம் இருந்தது தோன்றவே கண்டமட்டு இல கை கொளக்கார்னவர் கண்டமட்டில் புரந்த கடாமுகன் கண்டமட்டில் இருந்த கடவுளை கண்டமட்டில் எடுத்தனள் கன்னியே. கொண்டு சென்று உமை கோகனதப்பதம் கண்டு போற்றி கடவுளை இந்தனள் வண்டு வார்குழல் வாங்கினள் செங்கையை அண்டர் நாயகன் விட்டிலன் ஆசையால் தாயும் அங்கது கண்டு மகிழ்ந்திர ஏய என் கரம் பற்றியது ஏதென வாயை அங்கை புதைத்து மகபதிக்கு ஆயிரம் கண்ணளித்தவன் கூறுவான்.
In former times, 50 rishis with Agastya at their head went to visit Varamuni. But he, convinced of the greatness of his own tapas, was disrespectful towards them. Those rishis, whose tapas was as precious as gold, turned to him angrily and said, "For your sin of thus disrespecting us, your next birth will be a buffalo, despised by all. Hearing this, Varamuni was greatly afraid. Rising up, he made obeisance to them, saying, "May you be gracious and pardon my error." To which they replied, "During your lifetime as the buffalo-headed demon, Mahisha, Uma will be performing tapas, and she will in an instant remove this curse." Varamuni was born in the clan of demons and became a king. One day he entered a forest. Rushing hither and thither, he became exhausted, and when he chanced upon a rishi by the name of Mannatan, Mahisha swallowed down Mannatan along with the lingam he carried in his hand. Subsequently, that lingam remained stuck in his throat. Anyone that wears a Shivalingam becomes the very form of the Lord. Accordingly, a karmic debt is incurred in the killing of Mahisha. If you bathe in the 9 holy waters, that debt will be discharged, concluded Gautama. But a voice was heard from the heavens saying, "All those 9 waters of rare potency will come to this place. Make sure by your action that they do so." At this, Parvati turned to Durga and said, "May you pierce the earth with the sword in your hand and bring forth the waters." Durga bowed to Parvati, then drove her sword into the ground. When she drew the sword out of the ground, the 9 holy rivers sprang forth. For a month, Parvati bathed in those waters, so that her sin was dispelled. That emblem of Lord Shiva, which had clung stubbornly to her, fell from her hand. The emblem of Shiva, which is with and without form, was installed on the western side of the tank with due puja. Mother Parvati bestowed the title Papa Vinashaka Mahalingya Murti and blessed the tank as Khadga Tirtha. Then she made her way to the temple to worship the Lord Arunachala.
अस्य श्री कीलकस्तोत्रमन्त्रस्य शिवऋषिः अनुष्टुपछन्दः श्री महासरस्वती देवता श्री जगदम्बा प्रीत्यर्थं सप्तशती पाठाङ्गजपे विनियोगः। ॐ नमश्चण्डिकायै। ॐ मार्कण्डेय उवाच। ॐ विशुद्धज्ञानदेहाय त्रिवेदी दिव्यचक्षुषे श्रेयप्राप्तिनिमित्ताय नमः सोमार्थधारिणे। सर्वमेतद्विनायस्तु मन्त्राणामपि कीलकं सोऽपि क्षेममवाप्नोति सततं चाप्यतत्परः। सिद्ध्यन्तुच्चाटनादीनि वस्तूनि सकलान्यपि एतेन स्तुवतान्नित्यं स्तोत्रमात्रेण सिद्ध्यति। न मन्त्रो नौषधं तत्र न किञ्चिदपि विद्यते विना चाप्येन सिद्ध्येत सर्वमुच्चाटनादिकम्। समग्राण्यपि सिद्ध्यन्ति लोकशङ्कामिमौ हरः कृत्वा सर्वमेवमिदौ शुभम्। स्तोत्रं वै चण्डिकायास्तु तच्च गुह्यै चकारसः समाप्तिर्न च पुण्यस्य तां यथावन्नियन्त्रणा। सोऽपि क्षेममवाप्नोति सर्वमेवन्न संशयः। कृष्णायां वा चतुर्दश्याम् अष्टम्यां वा समाहितः। ददाति प्रतिगृह्णाति नान्यथैषा प्रसीदति। इत्थं रूपेण कीलेन महादेवेन कीलितम्। यो निष्किलां विधायैनां नित्यै जपति सुस्फुटं स सिद्धः स गणः सोऽपि गन्धर्वो जायते वने। न चैवाप्यटतस्तस्य भयं क्वापि हि जायते। नापमृत्यो वशं याति मृतो मोक्षमवाप्नुयात्। ज्ञात्वा प्रारभ्य कुर्वीत ह्यकुर्वाणो विनश्यति। ततो ज्ञात्वैव सम्पन्नमिदं प्रारभ्यते बुधैः। सौभाग्यादि च यत्किञ्चित् दृश्यते ललनाजने तत्सर्वं तत्प्रसादेन तेन चाप्यमिदं शुभम्। शनैस्तु जप्यमानेऽस्मिन् स्तोत्रे सम्पत्तिरुच्चकैः भवत्येव समग्रापि ततः प्रारभ्यमेव तत्। ऐश्वर्यै यत्प्रसादेन सौभाग्यारोग्यसम्पदः शत्रुहानिपरो मोक्षः स्तूयते सा न किञ्जनैः। इति श्रीभगवत्याः कीलकस्तोत्रम्।
आयुष्या भुवनानां चक्षुष्यास्त्रिपुरारेः कुर्वन्तु प्रमदं नः पार्वत्यास्मितलेशाः।
नात्यर्घाणि निरर्थं नेतव्यानि दिनानि अम्बायाश्चरितानि श्रोतव्यान्यनघानि।
उद्योगं कुरु जिह्वे संहर्तुं दुरितानि पूतान्यत्रिसुतायाः कीर्त्यन्तां चरितानि।
श्रीशक्तिर्विनिवार्या चिन्ता कापि न कार्या नित्यं चेतसि धार्या दीनानां गतिरार्या।
ज्ञातुं या गदितुं या श्रोतुं या श्वसितुं या द्रष्टुं यान्तरशक्तिस्तिष्ठात्र स्मृतिरेषा।
विभ्राजीनशताभं बिभ्राणं शिरसीन्दुं स्मर्तव्यं जगदम्बा रूपं वाधुतपापम्।
येषां स्यात् परितप्तं प्रायश्चित्तमघेन रुद्राणि पदसेवा प्रायश्चित्तममीषा
तद्दीप्तं पदयुग्मं सेवे यत्र भवन्ति अङ्गुल्यो दश भानूनां शतकानि
चेत् कुप्यसि किञ्चित् याचे वाचमतीते सेवां मातरुरीकुर्विष्टं मे कुरु मा वा
शर्वाणि चरणार्चा पीठं पीवरकाणां मध्यस्थानमिदं स्यादुग्राणां दुरितानाम्
स्कन्दाम्बा पदपीठ स्पृष्टं चेद्बलमाप्तम् एकैकं सुममं हस्सु एकैकं कुलिशं स्यात्
अम्भोजोपममङ्घ्रिं शम्भोः पट्टमहिष्याः अंहः संहति मुग्रां संहर्तुं प्रणमामः
कालीपदवेशं नालीकं प्रणमन्ति नैषां किञ्चिदशक्यं नालीकं मम वाक्यम्
वासस्तेऽत्र समाप्तः पङ्केतो व्रजदूरं कालीं शङ्करनारीं कालेऽस्मिन् प्रणमामः
आशारे तदवस्था भूभाग नटतस्ते कामानां पनुपारः कामारेर्नमनारीं
धन्यास्ते तु हि नाद्रेः कन्यां ये प्रणमन्ति अन्यानुन्नतशीर्षान् मन्ये वन्यलुलायान्
पादाम्भोजमुमायाः प्राज्ञाः सम्प्रणमन्तः गृह्णन्ति श्रियमस्मिन् राजन्तीं निजशक्त्या
मन्दाराद्रिसुताघ्री दातारौ सदृशौ स्तः उत्कण्ठैः फलमाद्यात् अन्यस्मानतकण्ठैः
कालस्यापि विजेतुः शर्वाण्याश्चरणस्य येषोऽहं कविलोकक्ष्मापालः अस्मि भुजिष्यः
रक्ते दर्शय रागं रुद्राणी पदपद्मे चेतः पुष्यति शोभां सारसारवतोऽग्रे
संशोध्यागमजालं सारांशं प्रवदामः स्कन्दाम्बा पदभक्तिर्भुक्त्यै चाथ विमुक्त्यै
वात्सल्यं गतिहीनेषु आयुष्यं सुकृतस्य भूय भूयोभिः सह सख्यं श्रीहेतुषु इह मुख्यम्।
श्लाघ्यं पुष्यति कामं प्रेम स्वप्रमदायां शर्वाणि पदभक्तिर्नित्याय प्रमदाय।
एकैवं बहुभेदा भिन्नत्वाद्विषयाणां रत्याख्याद्रुतिरन्तः सा सूते फलभेदान्।
हर्षं कञ्चन मातुः मत्तो भक्तिभरेण तन्वन्नेष विधत्ता हेरम्बो मदलेखाः।
या माया मधुकैटभ प्रमथनी या महिषासुरन्मूलिनी या धूम्रेक्षणचण्डमुण्डमैहनी या रक्तबीजनाशिनी शक्तिशुम्भनिशुम्भदैत्यदलिनी या सिद्धिलक्ष्मीपरा सा चण्डी नवकोटिमूर्तिसहिता मां पातु विश्वेश्वरी। स्तुता सुरैर्पूर्वमभीष्टसंश्रया तथा सुरेन्द्रेण दिनेषु सेविता करोतु सा नः शुभहेतुश्वरी। शुभानि भद्राण्यपि हन्तु चापदः या साम्प्रतै चौद्धतदैत्यतापितैरस्माभिरीशा च सुरैर्नमस्यते करोतु सा नः शुभहेतुश्वरी। शुभानि भद्राण्यपि हन्तु चापदः या च स्मृता तत्क्षणमेव हन्ति नः सर्वापदो भक्तिविनम्रमूर्तिभिः करोतु सा नः शुभहेतुश्वरी। शुभानि भद्राण्यपि हन्तु चापदः सर्वबाधाप्रशमनं त्रैलोक्यस्याखिलेश्वरी एवमेव त्वया कार्यमस्मद्वैरिविनाशनम्। सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते। सृष्टिस्थितिविनाशानां शक्तिभूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते। शरणागतदीनार्तपरित्राणापरायणे सर्वस्यार्तिहरे देवी नारायणी नमोऽस्तुते। सर्वस्वरूपे सर्वेशे सर्वशक्तिसमन्विते भयेभ्यस्त्राहि नो देवी दुर्गे देवी नमोऽस्तुते।